So you guys know I love small form factor builds, and we're gonna build one today inside of a brand new case that I have never worked with before. This is the IQUINIX ZX-1, and it actually comes in two flavors. So there's a shorter one that's primarily for airflow builds, for air cooling. You can do two 120mm fans at the top, which is still really nice, but no room for an AIO, whereas this version of the ZX-1 has additional room at the top. You'll notice that one case, the white case, is slightly taller than the other. And that's because it can house a 240mm radiator at the top, which is pretty sweet. We're gonna put some pretty high-end hardware in here because this is a fairly high-end case. I mean, you're gonna pay around 200 bucks for the airflow version and roughly 350 for the water-cooled version. So kind of makes sense that we're throwing high-end hardware in here. We're gonna put a Ryzen 9 5950X 16-core chip inside, as well as an RTX 3080 Founders Edition. And I actually did a poll on Twitter, or I'm sorry, it was on Twitch. I asked you guys if you wanted this pairing or something a bit more mid-range, mid to high range, like a RTX 3060 Ti and a 5600X. You guys voted for this. It was close. It was like 53% to 47, but in the end, you guys wanted, most of you wanted the high-end stuff. So I'm actually really curious to see how this is gonna go, what the temperatures are gonna be like. This case, right off the bat, just from looking at it, at first glance, sort of reminds me of the Dan case, just in its internal layout and design, and also the quality. We'll talk about the quality in a sec, but look at just this top panel. This has like totally open ventilation at the top. Both of the side panels are vented as well. Obviously nothing at the front, but it's looking promising so far. But of course, we'll wait to do the testing before we actually make any claims. Now the case is super premium. Obviously, these are not cheap, but you get what you pay for, and the quality is absolutely second to none for a small form factor case. Full aluminum construction. There's not like a bit of plastic on this thing, maybe except for like the case feet or something. But really nice finish. Like the materials that they use are really high quality, and all the panels are magnetic, so they actually pop off very easily. Much easier when you have two hands to work with. Just pops off like that. The side panels, whoop, so seamless. Boom. And like that, you can easily get in and out of the system or out of the case. I actually like this design a lot more than like the pushpin design that Lian Li uses for the Dan case, and you know, a bunch of other manufacturers use that as well. But I don't know, this just makes a lot more sense. I've actually had a lot of those plastic tabs, those pushpins fail or just like completely break because they're usually made out of plastic on other cases that use them. Whereas you're not gonna have to deal with that possibility with just a bunch of magnets. So that's pretty cool. The front I/O, I should have showed you that first, but two USB 3.0 ports, mic and headphone jack, and a USB Type-C port. So nice connectivity for such a small case there. Let's go ahead and start building. So had you guys voted on me using the 5600X, I probably would have used maybe a slightly more budget board, but since we're using the 5950X, I knew I needed a board that had a more robust power delivery. This is the Gigabyte B550i Aorus AX, or Aorus Pro AX, I should say. And it's pretty fully loaded. It does have a 6+2 phase power design with Dr. Moss and 90 amps per phase. So very reliable, clean power, and I'm gonna hold off on mounting the water block. So I don't know if I mentioned that, but I'm gonna be using the white case, the water cooling ZX-1 for this build. Obviously we have a 5950X, so I think that's warranted. But before you actually install the water block onto the board, you have to pass the water block and tubing through part of the case, which means you also have to sort of mount the radiator and fans before you install the water block onto the board. So I'm gonna hold off on that for now. I can, however, install our memory. We've got 16 gigs of Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro, DDR4 3600 speed, which is the sort of sweet spot frequency you want for Ryzen 5000. And as you can see, I've selected white components for this build to match the case. How thoughtful of you, Kyle. We're gonna leave these mounting brackets on because I believe the cooler uses those for mounting. So final thing we need to do before we install the board is install our M.2 drive. I'm gonna be using a Corsair MP600 NVMe. It is PCIe Gen 4, which this B550 board supports. That'll also be nice for our graphics card. However, actually it won't be nice for our graphics card because I believe this case, the ZX-1 ships with a PCIe Gen 3 riser cable. So you will have to buy a Gen 4 cable separately if you're going to be slotting in a Gen 4 card. Why aren't you coming undone? Oh, it's just a really long screw. Okay. Ooh, that's a nice heat sink. Looks beefy. Don't forget to remove this. In you go. Okay, before we install the motherboard, we actually have to remove some of these panels. So the ZX-1 actually comes included with this handy screwdriver and a couple different bits. We got Phillips head, and it looks like 2 hexagonal hex screws as well. And it looks like they're different sizes, so that's interesting. Means I'll probably have to swap it out at least once or twice. I'm wondering why they didn't just use all the same type of screw. That's a little weird. But it looks like this top panel, this is the radiator bracket at the top here that I'm just removing with 4 screws, it looks like, so not too bad. So this should pop out pretty easily. Oh, I think there's one more. Looks like there's 2 more actually, 2 more screws that are, yep, mounted to the spine, the middle area. And there we go. Lifts out pretty easy. And then we also have the power supply bracket that we should probably remove. Looks like 4 screws are holding it in place. The quality of these individual pieces, of everything really, is super impressive. Like just the, I don't know, everything, like it's got smooth edges. It just feels so premium. And for this price, it honestly should. All right, so looks like this is gonna be mounting upside down in the case. So this is from where you're seeing, this is the top of the case, this is the bottom, this is the front, and the board just goes right here in sort of the back right corner. Fits really nice and snug. Included accessories, screws. It's all compartmentalized and stuff to keep things organized, which I always appreciate. Oh God, how did that happen? Okay, let's try this again. Oh, it's because the magnet. That's okay, that's one thing to consider. Because all the panels are magnetic and there's a lot of magnets in the case frame itself, you may find yourself getting things stuck to them. All right, board installed. Let's go ahead and mount the AIO to the case. Okay, so the first thing we have to do here is actually route our AIO, the water block and tubes, through this part, this big opening of the panel, the radiator bracket. And by the way, we're using a Corsair H100i RGB Platinum SE, which as you can see is also white, so that looks nice. So once that's through, we can just start mounting our fans and radiator assembly here. I'm actually gonna mount the fans in such a way where the fan cables are coming off on this side of the case, because this is where the motherboard's gonna be. And it does have like some cutouts, some grooves on either side of the panel where you can actually route the cables through so it doesn't interfere with the rest of the case frame. I'm gonna mount this in a pull configuration. There's definitely some room for testing and comparison here, whether mounting a radiator up here in pull or push makes much of a difference, which one's better. So I think I'm gonna mount this in a pull configuration where the fans are actually pulling air from the top of the case, and it's gonna be fresh, cool air. I think that'll be better for our CPU temps than if we were to do a push configuration and ejecting hot air out the top. Because if we did it push like this, we would be taking all the hot air from inside the case and blowing it through the fin stack of the radiator, which I think CPU temps would suffer a bit. Our GPU temperatures may not be quite as good in the pull configuration, since the air will be heated up a little bit by the radiator as it passes through. But I'm pretty confident in the Founders Edition cooler on the RTX 3080, and with a 16-core CPU, I think I kind of just want to prioritize those processor temperatures a bit more. So we'll see how it goes. If temps are horrible on the CPU, then I may consider rearranging stuff and swapping to a push configuration, and we can do some A/B comparison testing, but only if it becomes an issue. So let's go ahead and mount this together. All right, a couple more steps before we actually get this whole assembly mounted to the case. So we've got our front panel area here that we should wire up. A lot of cases usually come with all your front panel connectors already pre-wired or soldered to the front panel of your case, but that is not the case here. They actually come with separate cables that you just plug in yourself. This is USB 3. We also have this SATA power cable, which I believe is just to give power to the ports. So you want to do like fast charging and stuff. That's what I imagine this is for. The last cable they provide is HD audio, but I'm not going to use that because A, I usually don't use HD audio, and B, it'll clean up some cable clutter that we won't have to deal with later. A couple other things I want to do are plug in some of the other front panel connectors to the motherboard. So they do have these front panel connectors pre-wired, your power and reset, because once we get the AIO in here, it's gonna be pretty cramped. And we obviously have to do this before we install the power supply at all, so. Okay, fortunately it just looks like there's power switch and power LED. This is also the right time to connect our riser cable to the motherboard. Last thing I'm gonna do here before we install the radiator is our power supply pass-through. So This actually needs to go through this side, and it looks like this should just snap in. Yep, there it goes. And this will be ready on standby for when we have the power supply installed. Okay, I think we're finally ready for the radiator and the AIO as a whole to come in. Gotta make sure all the cables are going the right direction and that they're routed properly so it doesn't interfere with us trying to install this bracket. All right, that sits down pretty flush. Just lock this in. All right, now I'm gonna plug in our USB 3.0. There's also a 120mm fan mount at the bottom of the case. But if you don't actually use that spot for a fan, the case does come included with this flat bracket that you can mount a 2.5-inch drive to. So whether it be an SSD or 2.5-inch mechanical hard drive, oh wow, it's really in there. So yeah, nice little metal bracket that just mounts to the bottom of the case. You'd have to do that probably at this point in the build too if you were gonna mount one of those. I probably will actually mount a 120mm fan down there. So let me do that as soon as I plug these fans in. That'll definitely help with our GPU temps. Now before I mount the water block to our CPU and motherboard, I do wanna actually wire up the 8-pin EPS connector for the cable because it's way here in the corner, kind of hard to see, a little hard to access, and it would be even harder to get to once that pump block's on. So I'm gonna plug this in. Heard the click. Now I don't have to worry about that later. All right, finally ready for the water block. Nice and easy. Thermal paste is already pre-applied. Okay, now we can deal with all the cables coming off of the pump block, like our fan splitter for one, which is really handy because we only have 2 4-pin fan headers on this motherboard. So this actually helps us a lot. We won't have to pull out another splitter. And if you thought I was actually gonna use a Lighting Node Pro in here to get RGB on these fans, you are insane, because that just adds a lot more unnecessary cables when you can't even really see the RGB. You won't be able to see anything once it's all done. So, you know what, there might be a little bit of room on the side of this radiator to actually cram some of these cables into. That way they're kind of out of the way, out of sight. It'll just look a little nicer. And just gotta connect our pump, and we'll worry about the SATA power once we have our PSU installed, which I think we're just about ready for. Now to install the bottom fan, we actually have to remove the bottom panel of the case first. So it's got 6 screws from the looks of it. Oh, actually there might be a few more, maybe 9. Looks like 9 screws. And they're using the smaller hex screws, so give me a second to undo these. All right, pops out nice and easy there. The reason you can't just install the fan from inside the case like this is because the lip of the frame here is actually just, it gets in the way, but this should work just fine. I just gotta make sure that where I'm mounting it doesn't interfere with any other part of the case. I'm gonna do something funky here. I'm gonna make this an intake. So we're actually not gonna have any exhaust fans. I'm gonna rely solely on the positive air pressure to just force hot air out of the case. And we'll see how that works out when we're looking at temps. All right, so now I'm installing our power supply, which is on the other side of the case. You can't see it right now. Well, I guess you can see it. There it is, our Corsair SF600. Very nice 80+ gold SFX unit. Probably goes without saying that this case only supports SFX power supplies. Full-size unit just won't fit. There are 2 different mounting locations for the power supply, slightly different. Where I'm putting it right now, or you can move it down 1/2 inch down. There's mounting holes for that too. If you needed more clearance at the top of the power supply for things like your PCIe cables or your AIO tubes, but I actually need more room at the bottom below the power supply because we got that 120mm fan in there, so that just gives me additional clearance for the extra cables, all the cables coming out of the PSU. Also off camera, I spent a little bit of time just routing cables on the other side of the case. That way I can ensure fan blades at the bottom still spin. No interference there. Okay, kind of a unique mounting solution for the graphics card. So first off, I'm gonna position it over here so that I can get the GPU slot into the PCIe riser cable, just like that. And the case actually comes included with a couple pieces here that are used to mount the GPU. So this is the first one, kind of just goes like that, and then this guy mounts over it, and you just use a single screw to hold that in place, and that should do it. Definitely not a solution that I'm used to seeing, but it actually works perfectly well. All right, we just got to plug our GPU in, and this build is done. Here it is, the finished build. Looking pretty good, looking pretty good. It is cramped. It is cramped when all is said and done, but not quite as bad as something like the Dan case. The Dan case is a little smaller, but not that much smaller. It's definitely a bit roomier in here, but still, if this is like your first build, your first small form factor build or something like that, you're definitely gonna notice it's tight. It's really tight, but it all fits. That's the important thing. Even more important, the system powers on, which isn't always a guarantee for me lately. But it's looking good so far. Cable management is virtually non-existent in a case like this. You kind of just cram them wherever they can fit. But fortunately, there is enough room in this case to actually get all the cables nice and flush so that we can put the side panel on without issue. You can also hear that the bottom fan is not making any unwanted noise, which means the blades aren't being blocked by any cables. That's also a good sign. There's our RTX 3080, looking pretty. You can see that there's still plenty of room back here for even a larger GPU. If we wanted to go a little longer, I wouldn't push it too much more, but if you had something like an aftermarket card that was a little bigger than the FE, probably be fine as long as it's a dual slot. You should probably see what it looks like with the panels completely on. And there's our insanely powerful 5950X RTX 3080 build inside of a shoebox. Let's install Windows and check temps. Okay, we got Windows installed, no problem, but as I was installing Windows, I realized something that I should have realized a long time ago, something that a lot of you guys probably caught early on in the build, and that is the RTX 3080 Founders Edition specifically is not a good fit for this case. The reason being is that it's got a fan on the back side that moves air through this fin stack in order to keep the GPU cool. And it can't really do that effectively if it's resting up against a motherboard tray or any kind of other flat surface, which it definitely is in the IQUINIX case. So I had to swap this out, otherwise I know for a fact it'll overheat because there's no way that fan would get any kind of air whatsoever. It would just be completely choked. So I was gonna use a different 3080 that I had on hand, like an aftermarket one, but all the aftermarket 3080s I have are triple plug. They all have 3 8-pin connectors because they're all beefed up and stuff. And the power supply I have only has 2 of those ports, or 2 of those connectors. So instead, I switched over to a 6800 XT from AMD. We've gone full team red at this point. This is an all AMD build now, but at least none of the fans are choked with this setup. So, the logo in the middle of the fan looks oddly suspect when they're spinning. I never noticed that before. But anyway, yeah, this should be a lot better, much more tailored for this kind of environment. We'll slap this back on, and I guess I can install AMD drivers now. While the drivers are installing, I guess I'll quickly point out some of these cool keyboards that IQUINIX also sent over. I didn't realize that IQUINIX also made mechanical keyboards, and these are actually really nice. I mean, kind of like the case, just totally far exceeded my expectations. But this is the L80 and the A80. They've got a bunch of other models too. These come in different flavors in terms of what mechanical switches you can get. You can do Cherry MX or you can do Gatoron, and there's a bunch of different colors to choose from. Very high quality boards, really strong like ABS plastic frame, PBT keycaps, you know, like I said, genuine Cherry MX or Gatoron switches, and they feel great. They absolutely feel terrific. So 2 different flavors there again, L80 and A80. I'll put links in the description in case you guys are interested, but it looks like AMD drivers are installed. All right, bit of an update. I've been running Unigine Heaven 4.0 for about 15 minutes now. We're testing out GPU thermals first before we move on to the CPU. And currently it's hot. It's about 87 degrees C. Oh, just hit 88. So it's still climbing steadily. And that's a little too warm for my liking. Just to experiment, I took the side panel off at one point just to see what would happen. And it dropped down to around 81, 82 C. So I think there could be some room for improvement on the ventilation side of things. Maybe the holes need to be bigger. I mean, if they went like this route, if they did the side panels like they did the top panel, then I guarantee it would help thermals tremendously, but obviously we can't test that right now. So what I'm gonna do now, instead of just letting it cook like a hot box, I'm actually gonna try undervolting our 6800 XT, and hopefully we don't lose too much power or performance, but that should help drop a few degrees to get us in a more reasonable range. All right, so I spent a few minutes tweaking settings inside of the Radeon software here. Lovely little software, it's come a long way. But I didn't really change much, to be honest. I'll quickly walk you through it. Power limit, I reduced by a measly 2%. I don't know, I just figured, why not? I don't even know if that's really doing much. I kept the max frequency slider exactly the same, haven't touched that. Don't want to compromise too much on core clock speed. The only thing I really changed here was the voltage. I reduced that by 10%, so we're operating at 90%, and just doing that has dropped our temps significantly. We went from what, 88, 89 to now 79. We dropped 10 degrees C. 10 degrees C, just by undervolting. That is the beauty of GPU undervolting. It works really well if you do it properly, and the GPU core clock is still looking really good, anywhere between 24 and 2500 megahertz on the core. 7980C is definitely more respectable. It's a lot less alarming. playing, you can game with confidence at those temperatures. Yes, it's still a little toasty, but remember we're cramming a really high-end high-end GPU inside of this little shoebox case, so you're not gonna really expect the same kind of temperatures that you would inside of like a mid-tower or full tower chassis. In that regard, I think this is a pretty respectable temp to be gaming at. Also, let's take a quick look at CPU temperatures. Now, Unigine Heaven 4.0 is only taxing the GPU right now. It's at 99% GPU utilization, but CPU is hardly breaking a sweat, so you wouldn't expect temperatures to be super high, although you actually might expect them to be high if the GPU inside is, you know, obviously creating a lot of warm air inside of the case. Then that could affect CPU temperatures negatively. But here we are, our 5950X only hitting around 64, 65 C, which is not bad at all. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I mounted those radiator fans in a pull configuration where it's pulling fresh air, cool air from outside of the case, as opposed to bringing all the hot air that the GPU is producing from inside the case and blowing that through the radiators. So I think that was a good move overall, but I still want to check out the CPU temperatures when we're actually putting the chip under load. So why don't we switch over to Cinebench and see how it does then. All right, we're about 20 minutes deep into Cinebench R23, and CPU temperatures are looking reasonable. Pretty reasonable, all things considered. 79.6 C is where it's at right now. It just hit a maximum of 80 C. Not bad for a crazy stress test on all 16 cores that's been going for 20 minutes straight. But obviously these stress tests that I'm throwing at the system are not really indicative of real world performance. No one's actually going to be using the system in this way 24/7. I don't know, unless you are. Unless you're just planning to build a rig, you know, like that so you can watch Cinebench run all day. That's cool too. But most of us are probably going to do things like gaming or maybe some content creation, streaming and that sort of thing. So I think that might be a more interesting test. Why don't we go ahead and check that out? All right, I'm in Night City now, and it's been about 10-15 minutes. Definitely enough time to get the CPU and GPU all heat soaked. And we're at 1440p right now, ultra settings. I can actually just show you really quick, just a quick gander. We're at ultra and 1440p, 2560 by 1440, which is the native resolution of this panel. And you can see there that our GPU is hovering anywhere between 76 to 80 degrees Celsius. I haven't seen it go above 80 yet, which is pretty similar to what we were seeing in Unigine Heaven, so that hasn't changed much, and that's a good thing. I'm glad it's not getting hotter than it was. And then the CPU is actually doing really well. Obviously, Cyberpunk 2077 is a bit more GPU intensive than it is CPU bound, but our CPU is still doing really good. It's only hovering around 65, 66C, and that's at around 40% utilization or less, and then still clock into 4.6, 4.7 gigahertz on all of those cores and threads. And while we're here, we've got plenty of overhead with our system memory as well, eating up around 6 or 7 gigs of DDR4. We got plenty left for other things. If we wanted to multitask, have some web browsers open, or browser tabs, Discord, things like that, or if we wanted to stream with this system, it can pretty much handle most of what you throw at it, just from the general consumer or even the prosumer side of things. It's gonna be able to edit, it can do 4K gaming, maybe not in Cyberpunk at max settings, but it can pretty much handle a lot. And inside of such a small package, it's pretty impressive. It is gonna get loud, it is pretty noisy. I would say that's probably the biggest shortcoming of this build today is acoustics. Thermals we finally got those in check. I feel like those are pretty reasonable, considering that we've got a 6800 XT inside of this small case. That's pretty par for the course and definitely manageable. So yeah, if I was actually using the system for personal use, I would probably swap out all the fans with Noctuas just to get as quiet of a noise profile as possible. Noctuas or equivalent, although Noctuas are kind of the best, so maybe there is no equivalent for that. But yeah, that would be one thing I would change. And I would also definitely play around with the fan orientation, both the radiator fans as well as the fan on the bottom of the case, just to see if that would change anything to give us an even more optimal experience. That wasn't very optimal. Trying to make a video here. Stop running me over.
Hello there.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you want to help support the channel and what we do here at Bitwit while receiving some quality merch in return, head to bitwit.tech and check out one of our new caps, premium hoodies, or our Ensemble One desk mats available in a variety of flavors. Thanks again, guys. As always, toss a like on the video if you enjoyed it, get subscribed for more tech content on the way, and I will see y'all in the next video.